Well, we're going to get underway. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to this edition of our Secretary Speaker Series. Obviously, it has been a consequential week with the election yesterday, and wherever you may fall on the political spectrum, I think we can all agree it's been an exhausting and nerve-wracking last several days. And so I just want to at least acknowledge that as we discuss something entirely different today. And I think about this in my own life as a bit of an intellectual palate cleanser from those broader electoral topics. And I hope this discussion finds you well and taking care of yourself. And once again, really excited that you've joined us. We are joined by almost 150 people now, with more people joining each minute. First, I want to introduce myself. For those who don't know me, my name is Wade Crowfoot, and I lead our Natural Resources Agency as California's Natural Resource Secretary, and really excited to be here and moderating what we call our Secretary Speaker Series. This is public dialogues that lift up leaders and big ideas and innovation across California and beyond. So very excited to be here with you. One of my favorite things about these discussions is I always learn a lot. And so I'm excited about today because I think we'll all be learning a lot. I first want to wish everybody a happy Native American Heritage Month. We at the Natural Resources Agency are really excited and proud to celebrate this month, as well as other heritage months across the year. And thanks to our team, which includes a colleague named Geneva E.B. Thompson, who will be joining us today, we have a remarkable set of activities happening across this month, including, of course, this discussion, as well as an in-person event here in the Sacramento region and other things that are happening here. So if you look at your screen, you'll be able to learn more about these events. I'm also pleased that in the Secretary Speaker Series, we have a lot of information that we'll be providing through the chat function. So if you go ahead and open up chat, my colleague Geeta Chandra, who really deserves recognition for putting these discussions together, is staffing the chat function. And so as we introduce our panelists and as we're sharing information, Geeta provides a lot of helpful info, including links to different items. And I think she's provided the link to all of those events that we're holding for Native American Heritage Month. So big thanks there. Also during this discussion, you can press the Q&A button at any time to submit a question to us. We'll see the question or observation that you're sharing on the panel. Some of the questions we may be able to answer directly via the keyboard, and then other questions that you pose to us, I'll work to bring in once we've introduced everyone, and toward the end of our discussion, we're in a group conversation. We also record these discussions, so about a day after, probably starting tomorrow, on our agency website, you can get a link to this discussion if you want to share it with others or see it again. Included with that recording is a copy of all the information that's being provided in the chat function as well. So without further ado, let's get underway. This is the first time that we've ever celebrated and unpacked the role of traditional food in Native American culture and how traditional foods can revitalize connection between tribal communities, lands, food, and culture. And so I'm really excited that we're being joined by 4 leaders here today that Geeta will provide the name of and more information on in the chat function. I want to kick the discussion off by introducing Sarah Calvosa Olson. Sarah, great to have you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Ayuki, Yojwa, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, so Sarah is many things, including an author, and she's written a remarkable book called Chimi Nuam, Native California Foodways for the Contemporary Kitchen. So I think Sarah, we wanted Sarah to kick us off because of really her journey actually to write this book and start to help us understand the role of traditional foods in Native American culture here in California, and then how it translates into the contemporary kitchen. So Sarah, if you would, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your journey to write this book.
Yep, I'm Karuk, and I grew up in Hoopa on the Hoopa Valley Indian Reservation, and my family has been living on the Klamath River forever, and by Aubrey Creek. I'm in Aubrey and Sanderson, and I have been working on this integration of foodways my whole life. We grew up very rurally without any electricity or running water or indoor plumbing for a long time, along a large part of my life. And my parents were very land-based in themselves. And my mother was an amazing gardener, and my dad would hunt, but we also relied on the commodity box distributions as well. So my father, being Southern Italian, has a really strong connection to food as medicine and as family and as a love language. And so my mother really and father really both incorporated all of these foodways together to create something that was nourishing but still meeting them where they were at. And so growing up with this philosophy of meeting people where they're at, and being adaptable to different cultural foodways in California from a place of kinship, and also wanting to connect my own children to what it means to be Karuk. And it isn't just about the food itself and eating the food, it's about their own relationship and what their own service is and what they're being called to do in service of these foods. And yeah, so this book is a compilation of family recipes. It's very personal. I had intended to write more about what other people were doing in this work and really highlight other people's work, because there are so many really vibrant food sovereignty movements all over California. But when the COVID happened, we were, and I had to pivot, and it became a compendium of really of like our most personal family recipes, and it's been very nerve-wracking in the hopes that it would resonate with some people and hopefully bring some traditional foods back into our kitchens in a less intimidating way.
That's incredible. And I'll note that Geeta shared the link to the book, which is published by the remarkable Heyday Books, which does incredible stuff across California. Sarah, we didn't prepare this question, but I'm just interested in a favorite recipe that you share in the book and an example of how it sort of blends this traditional and contemporary kitchen.
Yeah, I think of my favorite is, and it changes by season, and I think that's because my season, I'm attuned to wanting different things in different seasons. But as we're going into the fall, I think the thing that I'm the most excited about is making chicken and dumplings with acorn dumplings, but I like to use quail or rabbit and thicken it with acorn. So it becomes like a really hearty acorn soup with vegetables. But then we put those acorn dumplings on the top, and they get really fluffy and delicious. And it's just a very hearty, soul soothing recipe with very familiar flavor profiles at the same time. So.
That sounds delicious.
Mhm.
Um, I want to ask you about sort of traditional foods and food ways of Native American communities versus, there's probably a lot of us who are in this discussion, not being Native, think about the sort of our food systems as, understanding farms and ranches and getting to the grocery store, et cetera. Just how can you help educate non-Native folks about what traditional food ways, mean in California Native American communities, and maybe what you mean by this whole sort of food sovereignty movement as well?
Yeah. That's a big question. So, I think that that it is something that it varies from tribe to tribe. I think what we're like a traditional food cycle is a food sovereignty cycle. It is a cycle of a tribal community being able to connect to their like land-based foodways in a way that they want to do it, in using all of the information that they have developed over time immemorial, and being able to choose their foodways and being able to have the power to protect those foodways. And inside this food sovereignty movement, this food cycle, people are doing many, many different things. And it is a division of labor, almost like a perfect division of labor. You have people who are called to work on the land, people who are called to weave and practice cultural burning techniques. There are people who called toward, our aquaculture and keeping that healthy. And then there's people who are called to do that, the cooking piece of it, or mess around in the kitchen like me. And there's people who are called to do the storytelling, the art, the language, all of the things that come with food. It isn't just the let's eat this bowl of food, it's everything. And it's this complete holistic contextual picture of a life.
That's incredible. And that's one, key learning for me in this job is just understanding from tribal leaders and tribal members, just the fact that all of this is holistic. Thanks to Karuk leadership, along with other tribes, we now have dams removed on the Klamath, which are bringing the salmon back, which is in itself incredible. But I know your, colleagues in the Karuk government have been really strong on cultural fire and getting fire back on the landscape. So can you just talk about sort of fire and salmon and how that plays into your tribe's traditional foodways?
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier, and I don't know that I had made this connection myself either, but the thought of fire and how even just taking it in one particular, traditional food like salmon, and how important fire is to salmon in its entire life cycle, and the things that go on out, on the land to protect the water that the salmon will be spawning in. And cultural fire is important for basket weaving, but it's also important to keep our stream banks and vegetation really strong, so they have really strong root systems that continue to grow back each year and get stronger each year, and keep the streams and creeks clean of additional silt, which means they stay colder. And so there's fire plays an important part even in the maintenance of the stream banks. And then as they come back, the water is colder it also, yeah, it comes back, it's colder, they're able to, spawn and have healthy populations at that time. And then using fire as a cooking technique is very traditional as well. It's one of my most favorite smells and memories, is sitting on the river with, salmon over coals, and the smell of it and the smell of the river. And all of that is, again, we can appreciate all of the different parts that people play in order to bring this one meal together. And it is a community effort, and it feels like a community effort.
That's incredible. Well, I want to bring you back into the group conversation in a little bit, but I just want to thank you for joining us. I'm so excited to actually order this book and bring this into my own family. And so just big thanks for being that educator and that cultural sharer.
Absolutely. I'm glad. And if anybody is getting into this book, I know this is a complex way of being and changing. And I want, if anything, if I want people to feel a sense of community from this book, and that I'm in community with you. We're working on this together, where many people are relearning and trying to figure out how to fit these in. And if you're struggling with it, you're not alone, you're in community, and we'll figure it out for you. So please feel free to reach out if you're struggling. Anybody that is working in this book or struggling, have questions, I'm here for you. So you're not in it alone. And that's the whole point of this, is that we're all in it together.
Mm, such a strong message, particularly on a day like today. So thank you, Sarah. I next want to introduce Patty Franklin. And Patty serves as the Environmental Department Director of the Scotts Valley Band of Pomo Indians. Patty, welcome to our discussion.
Thank you. Yes, yeah, thank you for having me. I'll introduce myself. So, Hale, Chinta A, Washi A, Patricia Franklin, Yimaba Napoba. Hello, my name is Patricia Franklin. I'm from Above and Beyond Village, also known as Scotts Valley and Sugar Bowl Rancheria. And it's great to be here today.
Yeah, it's great to have you, and I'm excited about your sharing both from the perspective of your leadership on environmental issues for the tribal government, and then also as a member of the Pomo Basket Weavers Association. So I'm interested. Just this conversation is about traditional foodways, and if you would share a little bit more about how that intersects with your work and your life.
Yeah, so I love being native. I love our culture. And one of the biggest things I think I love about it is just all of the native plants and all of the food that's just around us all of the time that most of us don't really realize. Um, Being the environmental director, that's pretty new for me. I've been the environmental director for about a year. Previous to that, I was always the cultural wellness advocate for my tribe. So I've been blessed to be able to be out in nature, gathering our foods, tending the land, and just doing those things that I love with my family and teaching them, and also going into the classrooms. That's one of the things that I really love doing. This month is full of education in the schools, and we're really thankful that the local school systems are allowing us to go into the schools to share about our cultural ways, and just I feel like that can just knock down any barriers that could come up between different cultures and different people. So them understanding who we are, and that we're still here. Because I know when I was growing up, some of my classmates would say, "Oh, I thought Native Americans were extinct." So I heard those stories. So it's great to be able to be there and get to see the kids as they learn about our culture and that we're still here, and just teaching them.
That's
And so,
incredible.
yeah.
Well, and talk to me when I think about Pomo country as I know it, which for those who aren't familiar, I think about as north of the Bay Area. I think of those incredible oak woodlands and the acorns, and I believe acorns play an important role in Pomo food. So, do you want to just share that and activities around acorns, particularly the time of year?
Yeah, so we usually start watching for acorns in September, and there's all different kinds of acorns, but our favorite in this area is black oaks. And we also like blue oaks. So we just, there's a first drop, and we get out there with the family, with the tribe, and we usually have events with our tribe and even local tribes. I just came from Pinoleville, and just got done doing a class out there with their community, and out there gathering and showing them how to leach the acorns, and also how to make different recipes. And so I think just getting out there with our families, it just brings us together, and brings our community together, and it's healthy. If we were to go back to our traditional foods, I just realized that there's diabetes and different diseases that we could actually um, would be able to lower those numbers in our native communities. So yeah.
Yeah. And it seems like just given the distribution and the abundance of acorns across California, it seems like it was an important food staple. You just for those of us like me that are curious, it sounds like there's a big process though in being able to actually use the acorns as food.
Yeah, I always tell the youth that I'm teaching for the first time that acorns are amazing. They're an amazing gift from the Creator, and I think it's amazing that our people knew how to do it, how to get the tannic acid out of there. So I always say they come in their own their own package, which is the shell, and they come with the preservative, the tannic acid that needs to be washed out. And we actually wash it out by leaching. And, if we buy something in the store, we're eating that preservative, in the packaged food. So yeah, but it is a process. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of dedication and a lot of hands. And even just with the access and all of those things, that kind of puts another barrier up to us having that in our daily diet. So like right now, what I do is I usually use it for ceremony and for our elders. And then, and then that's when we get to partake in it if there's not enough. So it's a big process, and access is definitely an issue when it comes to it. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Access of tribal members to homelands to actually be able to gather foods, as well as basket weaving material. We've been working towards the idea of co-management and expanding access. Do you want to talk about the importance of that, or what's underway to try to expand access and co-management?
Yeah, so what we've done, so I'm from Scotts Valley Band of Pomo Indians, which is a landless tribe. So we don't have land like most tribes, and so it's been pretty difficult to just have the resources that we need. So one of the things that we've done is we have an MOU with Lake County Water Resources to gather at Highland Springs Reservoir. And so we get our tule out there, we get different foods and medicines out there. So that's one way that we were able to continue. But we're always looking. When I go out and I do education, even things like this, oftentimes people will contact me, and this year has been a blessing. People will say, I have a lot of acorns, and, could you come and gather them? And so, you know, that's been a blessing, but it's mostly in that way that we've been able to access. And, that takes a lot of effort because you have to build those relationships with people, with landowners, and even with public places, because then, it's not always an open door. You have to build the relationships to get in the door, and then turnover, staff turnover, you got to start over again when new staff comes in. So, we're really glad to be able to have been approved for the nature-based solutions grant, where we're going to be getting some land, and we'll be able to have our own basketry plant garden, and also have our own oaks out there that we're able to gather safely, and yeah, take care of our own medicines and things like that. So yeah.
It's incredible, and huge thanks to your leadership. We're really proud at our agency to support tribes like yours that are focused on getting land back, ancestral land return, which is so important, not only for tribal sovereignty, but for improving the way that we care for the environment, right? Because, your tribe has been caring for this part of what we know as California since time immemorial. So I talk about this as not only the smart thing to do, but well, not only the right thing to do, but the smart thing to do as well. I'm really interested too, for what it's worth, in the idea of opening up more of our public lands for co-management and access. You think about, we have 1 million acres of ecological preserve that's managed by our Department of Fish and Wildlife. We have like 1.5 million acres, I think, or more, that's managed by our state parks. So we're really trying to figure out how can we advance these agreements, these MOUs, these co-management agreements to enable tribal leadership to care for these lands and to ensure access for gathering. So I'm hopeful that these steps that we're talking about are small steps in what is really a long journey forward.
Yes, I think that's definitely a good step. And, I really, for our family, we really love the land, and we love taking care of it. And, if we don't take care of it, then we don't have the foods that we need. And we understand that, but we also have a respect for the land. And, just knowing that, for us, we believe that it's a responsibility. a responsibility given to us from the Creator and also from our ancestors. And so even though sometimes we don't own the land, with the deed, we still have a responsibility to take care of that land. And so we take it really seriously. And so the access, I think, would be great for the Native community to be able to go and, gather and start to help take care of our land.
It's incredible. Well, huge thanks for sharing your experiences and your wisdom here today. You've inspired me, and hopefully that now we're joined by about 200 people in this discussion. Hopefully others are equally inspired by what you're doing and how we can learn. And regardless of where you may find yourself in California, if you're joining us, rest assured, you're on tribal lands because California Native American tribes lived across our state, and so we, from my perspective, all have a responsibility to build these tribal partnerships and to expand access. So thanks so much, Patty. We'll get you back involved in the group conversation. I next want to introduce a colleague and friend of mine, Secretary Karen Ross. I can say that most everything I've learned about California agriculture, I've learned from Karen. And she is innovating in a huge number of ways, including something we're really excited about, linking local farmers with schools in terms of building this pipeline for nutritional food into schools that supports local farms. And Karen, I know you were excited to join this discussion, just given this different take on agriculture. Traditional Native American agriculture or food ways looks different than regular agriculture. So first of all, just welcome, and I'm interested in your thoughts on this general topic.
Well, first of all, I love that you're doing this. As you know, I'm passionate about food and how it brings people together. And there's so much to learn from our previous two speakers. I could listen all day long. And so I just want to note the importance of our language and how we talk about agriculture and food traditionally in the state throughout our code of statutes and all those kinds of things. It doesn't necessarily include Native American cultures and the way in which we've already heard about. And so we've done a lot of listening, and we're still learning and growing by listening to tribes and to tribal members to really make sure that we take this back to our programs and our services and our grant programs in particular, to make sure that the language allows tribes to see that, yes, this is something that applies for them, that can help them, that can support their efforts on foodways and food security and sovereignty. And so our learning lesson has been very, very important. And that's why I want to thank you for these luncheon series. I always learn so much from you, and I'm so appreciative of this. And I want to acknowledge our tribal advisor and farm equity advisor, Thea Rittenhouse, who has done a lot of work to make sure that we have been able to use one program, the Farm to School program, as a very specific example of how the staff listened and made sure that the language in our grant proposals made it very clear that we were inclusive of forest to school and rivers to school. And I'm very happy to say, in addition to that, and the listening sessions and technical assistance, we also have done a set aside and prioritized tribal applicants. And in the most recent round, we had 5 tribes that qualified for their own farm to school programs. And so I'm excited about that. It's also important that our climate smart agriculture programs also have the same kind of intention to make sure that climate smart agriculture, whether it's practiced in more urban settings or in native lands, that we want to make sure that all of those will work for them. I think that it's also important to acknowledge how much we really value the listening and building the relationships, because we have a lot of programs. Not all of them are going to be applicable to the tribes, but we want to make sure that we continue to take these steps throughout all of our programs and learn more about that. You and I sit on the Invasive Species Council, and we know how important that work is for protecting native lands, as well as our desire to have even more native plants and opportunities to be able to expand that. A couple of other programs that have also been very relevant to this desire for sovereignty, food security, and foodways has been our Healthy Refrigeration Program. I have to say, we've been fortunate with Farm to School, with the championship of the first partner and support from the governor and the legislature, that we have actual funds to be able to carry this out. We also had a healthy refrigeration program, doesn't have any current funding, but we had a number of tribes that were able to bring refrigeration and cold storage, which helps them with their food sovereignty and food waste programs. And then I do want to note that we have right now, we have a call out now for proposals for community food hubs. And I think this is one that could really be of great value to tribes. And we will work with the tribes. We'll make sure that we give advance notice because many tribes are small and they don't have the same capacity for grant writing. And we want to make sure that we give advance notice and provide the technical assistance to make it happen. So I'm more interested in listening to our speakers today because they have so much value to bring to this conversation. But I did want to make sure that I highlighted those programs and really acknowledge your leadership for doing these kinds of speaker series. I'm thrilled that you're doing this one, as well as Thea's leadership in helping us really be much more intentional and inclusive about this. And I also want to add, we do have a tribal member that is a member of one of our newest advisory committees for BIPOC farmers too. Thank you.
Incredible, Karen. When I hear you talk about this range of programs that our California Department of Food and Agriculture has, whether it's Farm to Schools, which is a national model, whether it's Climate Smart Land, same thing. And, your experience is like my experience, which is, we built these, well, I think anyways, we built these programs in state government at a time when really there wasn't recognition of the importance of tribal engagement shaping these programs. And so it sounds like you guys have stepped back and listened and learned and sought out that consultation that and then sort of reshaped the program to ensure that actually tribes can participate and benefit.
Right. I think it's really important that we come to these conversations with tribes with a great sense of humility, of the desire to learn, to listen, and to, as much as we can, also get on the land and walk the land and, of course, share some food. And I think it's because it was lunchtime, but Sarah's like, I was like, wow, let's have a meal together, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, in that regard, I also want to acknowledge the Intertribal Ag Council. They have been a great partner for us to do statewide listening sessions and roundtables. And we do have a report that is a roadmap for us to follow as we do this work throughout all of our other programs and services. And then we have, we're very fortunate that the Farm to School staff has 16 regional navigators. They've been very good at the outreach and doing the listening sessions to improve our programs there. And that sets a good model for us. We don't have dedicated staff like that for all of our programs, but this listening, learning, consultation is hugely important for us to be successful in advancing foodways and food security and better nourishment for everyone in California.
Wow. Hey, one last question. You mentioned community food hubs because you wanted to turn people on to that new program. How would you define a community food hub, or what are you trying to do there?
Well, a community food hub is very much about climate resiliency and food security, in that it's really dedicated to many, many small scale and very small scale farmers, bringing them together, which Farm to School has already successfully done with some small scale farmers who then decided to be an aggregator to be able to serve larger school districts, but still have that food coming from local farmers, BIPOC farmers within a region. So it's all about building this infrastructure to really support more local food procurement, which creates more economic opportunity for small scale farmers, but also brings the source of food closer to where people are. So a community food hub is exactly what Sarah was talking about. Is this whole system of bringing food from this region, making sure that it will be ethnically, culturally appropriate for the populations we're serving within the schools or other institutional procurement, but making sure there's an infrastructure, because a farmer can only do so much on a daily basis. And so there's these other steps to help get it to that school lunch program or the consumer's dinner plate, so to speak. So that's what we're trying to do with this limited amount of funding. It's a pilot program, but I'm very, very excited about it.
Incredible. When you put all these programs together, which Gita has put in the chat, just you are shifting the paradigm.
We're trying.
Yeah. And which very much includes tribes. So for those who are joining us today, if you have questions, do reach out to the Department of Food and Ag through these programs because we're committed to them being successful, Karen, and we want to ensure obviously that tribes are part of that. So
absolutely. Great partnerships. Let's keep building the relationships. Thanks.
thank you so much. I next want to bring on our final panelist, and that is my colleague and friend, Geneva E.B. Thompson. I can't say enough about your leadership, Geneva, shifting the paradigm as we're talking about it in terms of trying to build in more ancestral land return, co-stewardship and co-management, tribal access. And I'm interested for you to talk about the role that these different policies are playing in actually food. You suggested, I think it was your idea of this particular conversation. I never thought about the work that we're doing through the lens of food. So help us connect the dots, if you would.
Oh, very happy to do so, and thank you for having me here today. Really to just kind of re-echo what Sarah and Patricia shared. Traditional food and culture and access and care of lands are all interconnected. And so you can't really have one without the other. And when we're thinking about how do we build stronger partnerships with California Native American tribes across the state in advancing tribal access, co-management, and ancestral land return, the care and cultivation, harvesting, preparation, and consuming of traditional foods is a necessary component of that work. And I know every time I'm in a consultation with a tribe or joining a tribal community, celebration or meeting, right? Food is integral to those connections between people, between place, and between culture. And so when we're thinking about the California Natural Resources Agency and our 27 departments, conservancies, and commissions underneath the agency in strengthening partnerships with tribes, advancing tribal access, co-management, and land return, we have to know with that comes the care and the consumption of traditional foods as well. And the reason why I, was so excited we could have this conversation here today is to help folks connect those dots. And so when we are thinking about what does a management plan look like for a particular area, and when we are consulting with a tribe or co-writing that management plan with a tribe, we have to be eyes wide open and understanding that there will be the collection of natural resources and the consumption of those resources, and build that into the management plan to ensure that we are not only supporting tribal priorities, but supporting the health and well-being of Native people who have relied on these food sources since time immemorial. I was also really so appreciative of Patricia sharing this idea of access to acorns being so critical, and that building those partnerships with landowners is necessary. And thank you, Patricia, for sharing that, because it helped me reflect on the work that we're trying to do here at the state of California and understanding our role in those historical wrongs committed against California Native American tribes and peoples, and how those historical wrongs have a direct connection to criminalizing and preventing harvesting and care and consumption of these traditional foods. So how do we break that down, and how do we develop policies and programs that acknowledges that hurt and then moves forward in the spirit of truth and healing? And so the MOU that was shared is a great example of how a local government can partner with a tribe, understanding that existing property laws or fences or barriers might be preventing folks from accessing their traditional foods, and how do we create new structures, create new relationships so we can remove those barriers so folks can have access to those foods, to those acorns, to those delicious meals that I think we're all feeling very hungry and wanting to enjoy. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about here. We are in the process of developing a new document, which we're calling the Tribal Stewardship Strategy and Toolkit. And this Tribal Stewardship Strategy is really thinking about how do we, as the California Natural Resources Agency and our departments, advance that tribal access, co-management, and land return, and knowing that it's um, having Native people back on the land, doing what they do best in relation to those lands. And then the toolkit piece is to provide resources and capacity support and thinking about how we can institutionalize this work into agreements. So it's not individual based, but more of how we as the state partner with the tribes, regardless of who's in what role and what position. And so really thinking through that process and to continue to strengthen our partnerships with tribes and support this important work.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, we have to hold ourselves accountable for making demonstrable change. So one information point that I was so impressed by recently is our state parks team has been really focused on building these MOUs, these co-management agreements and tribal access agreements. And as I understand it now, over 50% of the land that our state parks manages is actually under these co-management MOUs. I think that's a big deal, and that's all happened in the last 5 years. At the same time, there are plenty of places across the state that don't have that where tribes don't have access. And Geneva, as you and others have educated me, right now we're one of the most culturally diverse places in the world, but this place was one of the most culturally diverse places in North America before European contact.
Yeah.
In other words, just the number and diversity of tribes actually across our state. So it's really important to note that the traditional foodways of one tribe and compared to other tribes in other places differ significantly. So it's really about shaping these access agreements and this co-management, with specific tribal communities in different places. We've got some great questions coming in, so I want to bring back the group and I want to ask some of these questions that we're getting from our participants. So if we could, we'll bring everybody back on screen, Patty, Sarah, and Karen, and we'll have this group conversation. And as they come on, I'll ask this first question. Dominic puts this question to us. If acorns and other native food sources in California are abundant, why can't I find these in the grocery store? Where would I find the ingredients to make acorn dumplings, for instance, which are, Sarah, very popular? Everyone's going to go out and get your cookbook. But this person says, I don't have enough knowledge to gather and process acorns myself. So maybe a question over to you, Sarah. It seems like it's a challenge to try to bring in these traditional foods when they might not be available in the way that some of us source our food.
Yes. So admittedly, this is a very inconvenient cookbook, and it is not like a traditional cookbook or the way that we have been trained to use cookbooks, that you kind of crack it open and get to all your weeknight dinner dreams. And this is meant to be playing the long game. So the whole point really is that you are building relationship and knowledge and figuring out your capacity for service to be in service of the things that feed you. So if acorns are your thing, if you have something in your yard, like for example, I have a lot of bait laurel trees, peppernut trees in my yard, and figuring out everything there is to know about that. How are they used? How do they grow? What do they need? And then what can I do to, increase its health or whatever, be a part of it. And then you start to gather your pepper nuts, you mess around with them, you get the tactile sort of feel of its properties, you start to understand it a little bit more, and you're becoming more in tune with the rhythm of that particular tree. And that rhythm is really where you want to cultivate your connection and that feeling. And it's a slow process. It's slow because it's intentional and you're present. And it's slow, especially in the beginning, but I cannot tell you how much momentum it will pick up after a year or two of gathering the one thing that you're into, suddenly it changes your world view. And how you view, I think hopefully how you'll view these recipes, that you'll see them more as like a guide for, this is what I'm going to make after I've done all this other work. It's more of the reward system. And I want it to feel that way because these foods are beautiful and vibrant, and they are going to be doing so much nourishing of your own spirit throughout this whole learning process, that when you go to eat them, yeah, it should be colorful. It should be a celebration. It should feel like a feast. And I think that can be even so for the easier weeknight meals too. And if you are feeling skeptical, there's a lot of recipes in there that can uh, be found, ingredients that you can substitute at the grocery store. They're not meant to be super precise. You can tailor it to your own flavors and textures, because not everybody is used to those types of flavors of earthiness and bitterness and fishiness, or the texture of something that might be a little more dense than you're used to. So there's a lot of learning all over the place, so many different parts. That's the whole holistic piece of it, is that you're teaching your body to appreciate the flavors, you're teaching your mind and your senses to access these other rhythms, and you're engaging your intellect because you're learning about it, and you're also practicing how to be humble and let other people lead, and to decenter yourself. So there's a lot of different pieces to it that um that you need to put into place. That's why it's the worst cookbook in the world. But if you do see something that resonates with you, I think that a lot of us are inspired by something that feels like art, to go down in a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And I know that storytelling is really what inspires me in when I'm outside. So I hear those stories, and that's kind of what I really enjoy connecting to. So maybe there's something to you that will send you down the rabbit hole: art, storytelling, language, just, you know, being in service of people. There's a lot of things. So find.
Incredible. Well, and to me, the cookbook is sort of an invitation on the journey to connect with traditional foodways. You know, it's a departure from simply going to the local grocery store that you can get any manner of food at all times, and actually connecting into the local environment. So it's fascinating. Thank you. I want to direct maybe, Patty, a question to you, which is, Carol says that in San Diego County, we have 5 different biosystems from the ocean to the desert. How can we work with our local tribes to grow and share crops if we live in different biosystems? So in other words, somebody in San Diego that's looking to connect with tribes, you know, specifically in these very different landscapes and ecosystems, what would you say? What would you suggest to non-native folks to try to connect with the tribes on this topic?
Well, I guess I would first direct them to the tribal governments, and then, find out who the cultural person is, or who's in charge of their food program, or, who would be in charge of that, and then just kind of, go from there. But yes, you're so right, Secretary Wade, that Crowfoot, that when you said that different resources are all over. So like all of us don't have the same resources. So we have different foods that we gather, and different climates, as has been shared here. So yeah, there's definitely, but I think one of the things that's important is that we do share those things, because in our tribes, because of colonization, there are some things that have went out from our culture, some things that have been lost. So maybe if there's a protein, or something, a grain, or things like that that aren't in our tribal communities, we can call on other tribal areas to bring that in, and sort of, be able to give all our tribal communities the nutrition that they need in order to be healthy. So, yeah, I would say, the tribal governments, reaching out to them.
Yeah, and building these partnerships, with with local tribal governments and communities. There's another question from Kirsten who says, what can Californians do in our day-to-day lives to support tribal initiatives or goals in our state? If folks want to get involved in some way, shape, or form, where should we begin? So Geneva, I want to put you on the spot to answer this, and then others can pipe in.
Yes, well, it's a great question. And again, want to just echo Patty, and the first step really is to reach out to the tribal governments in your area. And we get this question a lot of like, how do I know who the tribal governments are in our area, right? And I always recommend just opening up Google Maps and searching tribe or tribal administration office, and you can then see where the tribal headquarters are in your region. Get the tribe's website, contact the person that the tribe has designated as that contact person, and introduce yourself to them. A lot of tribes also have Facebook pages where they advertise their public events and community gatherings, and that's a great place to go meet people and join in and learn and contribute. It's always, since we're talking about food, it's always a good practice to bring food to those community events, right? Contribute, show up, help set up or clean up, and just show that you're wanting to be part of the community is always the first step. Other initiatives that I think individuals can take in supporting tribal priorities and access and care of traditional foods is really to work closely with your local governments and share that it's important to you as a person in that community that the local governments are partnering with tribes in this space. Um, Leaning in and supporting the local tribe in your area and their priorities. So if a tribe is saying, we would like access to this acorn grove, that is a great opportunity to say, I'm here to support that tribe and their access to that acorn grove, right? And so it's really connecting and getting acquainted to your neighbors, to the tribal governments in your area, and lending a hand in being in community with them.
That's great. We're getting towards the end of the hour, so I want to just put a few questions to you, some of which we may not have the expertise to answer, but I'll throw them out there. Hillary asks, are many of the traditional foods pollinated, and is pollinator conservation an issue that ties into indigenous food security? Jack asks, can you address desert-based tribal foods, or I would imagine traditional foods that grow in the desert for those tribes whose homelands are the desert? And then Tim asks, are there any restaurants in Greater LA that feature Native American cuisine? So those are three diverse questions, but I put it to group. Tough questions. Maybe we don't have an answer for all of those, but let me put this to you. Sarah, I understand that there are some really highly celebrated restaurants in California and across the country that are featuring Native American cuisine. Anything that you want to share on that or even feature? I think you're in the Bay Area, so maybe there.
Yeah, in the Bay Area, we have a couple of restaurants. We have Wapapa's Kitchen, and that's in Oakland at the it's in Fruitvale in Oakland, and it's amazing. It has such a good vibe when you go in there too. So it's really great. Her food is wonderful. She's Kickapoo, actually, she's one of the main reasons that I became a food writer, and just randomly on a rooftop one night. So I yeah, her work and her community work is incredible. So supporting her supports a great deal of community food work. Also, the guys at the Alone Cafe in Berkeley are still doing really fine dining. It's so beautiful. It's such an experience of fine dining in a way that feels like nothing you have ever felt before, because you're dining in community and with other people in a communal way, and it's a full experience, and their food is excellent. It's beautiful, like 5 stars. So wonderful. So we have the Alone Cafe and Wapipa's Kitchen, and I'm not sure about any specific Native Californian restaurants in LA, but there are a lot of indigenous restaurants down there from indigenous relatives from the South and from other places as well. So, yeah.
That's incredible.
Mhm.
And I want to note that Gita put in the chat information on the restaurant in Fruitvale that you referenced, but then also Patty, the Pomo Big Time Festival, which that's another great way for non-native folks to actually explore collaboration, right? Are these festivals and in some cases powwows, et cetera, that people can get turned on to. You want to just share a word on that annual celebration?
Yeah, so we have our annual celebration in August, September, and but most tribes do have them and they're open to the public. It's our time to share our culture with the community, to share our foods with the community. So it's a good time to come out. There's usually something made with acorn, different recipes and just all the different, we try to use as much as we can when it comes to our ceremonies. So, and it's definitely a good way to get to know different tribes. So, and yeah, like I said, most of the tribes have them.
I love that. Well, listen, as we come to the end of the discussion, I want to thank you all for joining us, both the panelists and those that have participated. To me, food is a bringer of joy and a builder of community. And I think as we move forward, and shifting this paradigm and supporting tribal leadership across what we know as California, food is a great connector. So I know that I probably speak for Secretary Ross when I say we're really excited to continue on this journey of listening and learning and then changing how we in state government support these traditional foodways. Sarah, Patty, thank you for teaching us and sharing your perspectives. I myself am going to get Sarah your book on Heyday, and then hopefully Patty book my trip up to the Big Time Festival for next summer. Thanks again, everybody, for joining, and have a wonderful week. If you have any questions or suggestions for us about this discussion or others that you'd like to hear or have us organize, hit us up at this email, secretarysuggestions@resources.ca.gov.